Welcome to the Start of Brian.
All right, let's give a huge DC welcome to the one and only Paul Allen. How's it going, Paul?
That until after I'm done speaking.
Good. You can take them home if you want. I promise. They'll do this to you every morning, but
I love that.
You
That's
love
good.
it?
Yeah.
But the only problem is you have to buy out their startup. So
Okay.
okay. So actually, you were actually here at my last interview, right?
Yep.
With Scott Case.
Yeah, when you were laying on the couch and he was psychoanalyzing
Yeah,
you.
yeah. How many of you were at the last one? Okay, they have no idea what you're talking about. But the last interview, Scott Case was up here kicking my ass on stage. So my question to you is, are you going to do the same?
No, I'm
Okay,
nice.
good. I seriously had to get 10 shots of whiskey after that. So this is, I can tell this is going to be a good interview. And so the other thing too is when I did some research on you, your Twitter account. Talk about that.
My Twitter account.
Yeah, it's called. You have Paul Allen (the Lesser).
Yeah.
So what's that all about?
So in the 90s, and as I got involved in entrepreneurship and raising venture capital, the other Paul Allen that everyone should know, that co-founded Microsoft with Bill Gates.
You're not Paul Allen, Microsoft?
No, I'm not that Paul Allen.
You're not?
No, sorry.
Oh, snap.
Did anyone think I was that Paul Allen?
Anybody thought it was the Paul Allen Microsoft? How many people are lying? Here you go.
So I spoke in '99 at a market research professionals conference in Seattle.
Yeah.
And it was packed. It was standing room only. And I'm pretty sure they thought it was the other Paul Allen. But I was rated the highest speaker at the event, so I didn't feel so bad.
That's good. Actually, this one tonight is actually the second highest attendance next
Cool.
to Steve Blank.
Thanks for
beat
coming,
Scott.
and thanks for bringing the Ancestry.com swag
nice.
there. That's good.
Awesome. There you go. Power user right there. So let's go right to the personal story. We like to start out on a personal note. So talk about where you're born, what your parents did, what did your parents want you to do, and then maybe sort of talk about like you have an early age memory of when you wanted to become an entrepreneur. So let's start with you.
So I was born in Provo, Utah, home of Brigham Young University. My dad was a professor of engineering at BYU. About 35 years he was there, kind of pioneered computer-aided manufacturing. And my mom was a homemaker, and there was 8 kids. So I basically grew up, my dad was very anti-business. So the last thing I wanted to do was be in business.
Okay.
Yeah, I was on track to be a professor. I kind of thought that was the highest calling, a noble profession. I admired my dad a lot, and business was like the furthest thing from my mind. Never had a business class, never had a technology class. I was a Russian major at BYU.
Wow. And so let's talk about your family. Like, how many siblings did you have?
So there were eight total.
Wow.
I was the 5th.
Okay.
So the only entrepreneurial thing I did, there's maybe 2 things. My buddy and I sold puddle jumpers for 50 cents each. We would make these puddle jumpers out of popsicle sticks and dowels, and then you could like float them up in the air like little helicopters.
What you sell them for?
50 cents.
Wow.
We sold
What was
a
your
few
markup?
dozen.
A few dozen?
Yeah, the markup was pretty good.
That's good.
Probably the thing that warped me from my parents' path of be a educator was I got hooked on Dungeons and Dragons when I was in 8th grade, and there you create your own worlds and explore them, and I think that actually fired my creativity beyond repair. And so then starting a company and like organizing like a little product is not a big challenge compared to like, slaying the beasts, the dragons, creating dungeons and personas, and it was pretty mind expanding. I used to tell people that all the best entrepreneurs I knew either played Dungeons and Dragons in the 70s or they were on drugs in the 60s.
Well, they're Magic players now, right? Is it Magic? Is the same thing with Dungeons and
Oh,
Dragons back then?
I don't know.
Did you sell
I've
like your
lost
Dungeons
touch.
and Dragons stuff?
No, I
Like, personal?
retired.
You retired?
I
okay.
had a feeling that I was wasting my life, and so I actually quit cold turkey. And I tell my kids this, the kids that get addicted to video games, I'm like, if you just kind of think about it, if you're playing, 10, 20, 30, 40, during the summer, 60, 70 hours a week, sleepovers
It's
every
like a
night.
job.
It was pretty amazing, but yeah, I quit in 9th grade. I quit cold turkey because I'm like, this isn't going to end well.
I'm glad you recovered from that. So let's go straight right into the Ancestry.com story. So describe the beginning days. How did you meet your co-founder? How did you come up with the idea? What was the original idea? Because I believe it wasn't genealogy at first. So
No.
talk about what the original idea was and how did you pivot from there. So let's start from the beginning.
So 1988, I was graduating from college. I got married, had to get a job, never had a job before. And my brother, thankfully, had founded a search engine startup company called Folio. And it ended up being the world's best desktop search engine. Pretty much every major publisher in the North America used it to index all of their content. So he hired me to run a scanner. I had no skills. I could run a scanner. It was like running a copy machine. I was pretty good at it. But it was a $40,000 Ray Kurzweil OCR scanner. And so as you scanned a page at a time, the words would show up and you could edit them on the fly. So in a minute and a half, you'd scan a page. So I did that for 6 months. That was my entree into high tech. And then I decided I really liked this, but I didn't want to do that job. So I had a mentor that taught me how to program, and I became a data processing engineer, and I became the top data processing engineer in the company within 2 years.
So you had technology background.
So that's where I got all my technical skills. The thing is, data processing engineers, it was something that I was terrible at programming, but I was willing to program. All the good engineers in the company didn't want to be data prep engineers. They wanted to be coders and build product. So I was good enough to do it, bad enough not to be tempted by being a product guy. So did that. My best friend from high school and I heard a talk from the university president. I was going to BYU. And he basically blew our minds with the concept that all the truth in the world, all the books, all the knowledge, all the maps, everything in the world could be gathered into one place so that communities of scholars could have access to it. Like, why not? Why not kind of provide that to the world? And I was working for my brother's company. I'm like, it hit me. Wait, that could all be done on computer, on CD-ROM. So the first idea was 1988, August, a speech. We founded a nonprofit, tried that for 2 years, didn't work. So then my best friend and I said, let's do this for profit. So in 1990, we started Infobases with the mission of identifying the most important books in every field of human knowledge, putting them on CD-ROM. So that was the big idea.
I mean, basically, it's identifying the most important books in every field of human knowledge.
Yeah, kind of.
All in one CD.
No, not on one
No?
CD.
How many CDs were you talking about?
We had compression technology. We could fit about 1,500 books on a CD.
15. One CD.
1,500.
So how many CDs did you have for your whole
Oh, well,
collection?
we were publishing different collections. So we had religious, historical, literary. We were getting into kind of scientific fields. So we published an American history CD-ROM that Apple loved, and they bundled it with all their library and school Macintoshes. And it was a great collection of original American history documents. So we're just kind of cranking out one field at a time, and then I stumbled into genealogy.
Okay. Well, I mean, so let's talk about the Infobases, right?
Mm-hmm.
The idea there. You said that I read that your first product were a floppy disk and CD.
Yep.
Sold from the back seat of your car.
Kind of more classified ads.
Okay.
We would load up our car and take it around to local computer dealers and bookstores.
Yeah.
But yeah, my co-founder was a fantastic salesman.
Okay.
First 17 dealers he went to all took our product. So he was amazing. I was the research and kind of product guy, and he was the sales guy. So yeah, that's how it started.
Well, it sounds very awfully familiar with another startup here in DC that had like a lot of millions of CDs.
Yeah.
AOL.
AOL.
So you didn't have the
carpet
same
bombing.
problem where you had millions of unused
I wish we
capacity
would have.
CDs.
I wish we would have had the same problem.
Yeah.
Our market was a very niche market to begin with.
Okay.
We did, by our 5th year, we were at 4 million in revenue. So we were a far cry from AOL's scale.
Okay. Well, we'll get more into how you pivot. So let's talk about it. How did you pivot into the genealogy, which now it's the largest genealogy website in the world? So
Yeah.
how did that idea first start?
Two things really happened. In '95, I had dropped out of a library science master's program because I was interested in classification of all knowledge, and so I started a master's program. My company started taking off in '90, and so I had to drop out of the program. But I spent hundreds and hundreds of hours in libraries and browsing shelves, looking for public domain content. I mean, that was gold for us. You could just digitize any public domain content, and then you go to the publishers and say, hey, we've got this collection, can we license your collection on top? It's kind of like Mark Cuban when he did broadcast.com. He and his partner did 150 publishing deals in the first year to sew up as many rights as they could. And we were kind of trying to do the same thing with public domain content and then sewing up rights. But in one of those browsing experiences, I spent time talking to librarians and found out what the best-selling genealogy books of all time were. And I kind of started realizing there's a pretty big market for genealogy and a huge content collection that's almost all public domain. So the cost was just digitizing. There was really no product development. So it was just kind of a serendipitous discovery.
No, that's great. I mean, you take public domain and resell it for profit. I mean, that's sort of like your original, your childhood memory idea, right?
Yeah,
Where you get the little thing, you get something you get for free, and then you sell it at a charge up, a markup. Yeah. So this is good. This is the next topic I want to talk about, which was, getting your hobby, which you were very passionate about, right? You were basically a truth seeker, right? You wanted to get the best curated data, put it into a CD, and then make it available to the world. So, let's talk about this hobby versus making a business. So, more so identifying points of pain for others and making a point of passion for yourself, right? So this is sort of like how you started. How obsessed were you about this? And then when did you realize it was it was sort of like a profession? You were already doing this, right? You were doing this as a profession already.
Yeah, well,
when did you realize it was?
I mean, really, when the first idea hit, it became an obsession. And then as we started, growing the business and started growing our capacity, the reality was that, wow, we could really do this. We could pull this off. Now, the big thing that happened to me in 1996, because I told you I grew up kind of anti-business, corporations were evil and, I should be an educator. And my dad probably never said those words, but, I think he thought them, and I think I got them by osmosis. But so in May of 96, our company had been honored as one of the fastest growing 500 companies by Inc. magazine. And I went to Infobasis. I went to Philadelphia, May of 96, and that meeting changed my life. Because I was sitting there with hundreds of entrepreneurs that were running the fastest growing companies in the US, and I just thought, these are the greatest people on earth. They're creating awesome things. They're hiring a ton of people. They're creating jobs. This is the economy engine for the economy. And I loved meeting all of them, and I was completely transformed. For the first time, I thought, I could do this for my life. This is a great calling, and I love being around these people. They are the makers. They are inspiring. It was awesome. That
was like the inflection point
totally
at that moment
for
when
me,
you had thousands of people there.
And then I realized I got a lot to learn about business because I had never had a business class. And so I kind of set about to get my virtual MBA by going to dozens of conferences, reading hundreds of books. I really had to kind of overcome this naivety that I had because I was completely uneducated, unmentored. And we had made so many mistakes our first 5 years. And as you're going to scale a business, as big as digitizing all the best books in the world, you better actually figure out the business model and get it right. So I had a lot of ground to make up.
Yeah, but I mean, in order to make it at Inc. 5,000 or 500, you have to show revenue, right, to get in there?
Yeah, we showed revenue, but on the profitability score, we were like an F.
Okay, got it. No, it's really interesting because, I mean, he's saying that Inc. 5000 conferences, blah, blah, it's like once, Silicon Valley or whatnot, but they actually had the Inc. 5000 conference here in D.C., like not even 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
So that changed your perspective.
Oh, it completely changed my opinion of what business is
right.
and who's doing it, who's making things happen.
Okay. So what is your opinion about, so still on this passion thing, what is your opinion about following your passion while doing a startup? Because there's a lot of people here who are doing exactly that. They're following their passion. But it might be, small, market. So what's your opinion about
I'm
that?
a huge advocate of following your passion. In fact, for those that are just scouting for a business idea or scouting for, the book Angel Investing that was published by Harvard about 12 years ago. It's kind of the definitive book on angel investing as a category. One of the top reasons people invest in you is because of your passion. So if you just have an idea because it's an idea that might work, but you're not, totally dedicated to making it happen and doing whatever it takes, that will come through in your pitch. So I think passion, number one, you're going to be way more satisfied doing something you're passionate about. Number two, it's contagious. And so I don't really like to be around entrepreneurs that really aren't passionate about their idea.
Okay, so on the same vein of this topic, though, I mean, ideas people are passionate about tend to be narrow and niched, right? I mean, I love contemporary art. I love jazz music. I love aftermarket parts for rice rockets, right? But, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be a big market. So how do I get a niche idea to make it into the next Etsy, to make it to the next Spotify, Cars.com, right? Those are the bigger markets. I guess the question here, again, with Ancestry.com, you took a small niche idea, made it into a mainstream phenomenon with millions of paying users, right? So I guess here's yeah.
I mean, so genealogy, it turns out, was already a pretty, very widely popular thing. There was research done in '95 that showed that 7% of adult Americans were pretty interested in doing family history research, but it was a completely fragmented, non-technology field. And so you had literally millions or tens of millions of people traveling to courthouses, archives, the country of their origin, and spending really hundreds of millions of dollars, but who was collecting that? The post office, the courthouse, the archive, the library. There was really no technology company to organize that market. So I don't think we grew the market until, and I left Ancestry by the time that television, Who Do You Think You Are, started playing on NBC. That actually started in the UK, where it was the #1 most popular reality TV show, attracting like 8 million viewers a week in England.
This is before Survivor?
It's probably, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how big Survivor was in the UK, but then the Who Do You Think You Are did come to the US, and I think that's where, when you get massive mainstream television advertising, you get people interested in genealogy for the first time. But for the first 8 to 10 years, it was just organizing the existing market and defragmenting it and making a single place where all the customers would be attracted to.
Okay, but I guess the question here, though, that small market owning a big chunk.
Yeah.
Okay, so a small market owning a big chunk of it versus, being a smart executor in a big market but owning a small chunk. So what do you think?
What's better?
Yeah, what do you think is better,
So
or is it sequential? Or
I
what?
think if you're an early stage, kind of first-time entrepreneur, you go after the niche. It doesn't matter how big the market is. You just build a successful small business with potential growth. You can always grow things later. You can expand product lines. You can go after different customer segments. So the long-term growth is there. The entrepreneurs that I admire are those that have been successful, and then they can go after a huge market, raise as much capital as they need, and the second time around or the third time around, there's like nothing in their way, But some markets need $100 million, $200 million to really build something. Healthcare.gov, that needed a lot of money. Oh wait, it didn't work, did it?
I don't know if you can throw it. I don't know if there's enough money you can throw at to fix that. But
yeah, but see, a small company for a few $1 million could have built that whole thing and made it work.
I'm sure there's some startups here that could actually fix it, right? Maybe. So I guess the other question I wanted to talk about was, how did you know? I mean, I know you talked about the whole research, but how did you know it's going to be a big market, right? I mean, how did you what were some of the social proof and the early signals that you got? And there's a lot of startups here that have niche ideas. What are some of the social proof that they can look at, and like I said, like signals that they can look out for to say this is going to be a really big ass market?
So one of the biggest thing I learned from my oldest brother, who later became the CEO of Ancestry, he had hired me years earlier, and then I hired him as the CEO of Ancestry to help us raise money. The biggest thing I learned from him is, don't be a spectator in the world of entrepreneurship, be a participant. So when you read a news article that's something that's really cool, go get an airplane ticket and go meet with the people that you just read about. Don't just sit there and read and go meet everybody. Go to all the conferences in your industry. I started going to genealogy conferences in '96. Within a year or two, I knew pretty much every content player in the genealogy space, and I was the leading technologist in the entire space. So that was because it was an unaddressed market. But even now, 15 years later, I went to a conference for Gallup in Baltimore last year in an industry I'd never heard of before, and it turns out about 80% of Fortune 500 companies are paying money in this industry. I'd never even heard the term, and within 1 or 2 days of networking, you pretty much know all the technology players in the space, all the middlemen, and so my brother basically got on planes and was a multi-million miler, and that rubbed off on me. And so, I got to meet Mark Andreessen, Bill Joy, all kinds of, phenomenal.
Did you meet Paul Allen?
I did not meet Paul Allen. I'd like to meet Paul Allen someday. I heard Bill Gates speak, but I used to go to conference after conference after conference and, listen and learn and shake hands and meet people. And of course, my name, Paul Allen, everyone would return my calls, and I could easily get meetings, especially when I moved to Silicon Valley. I thanked my mom like 100 times. Thank you for naming me Paul Allen.
We're gonna talk more about that, the whole name branding thing. But no, so that's interesting. So all startups out there who are in a particular vertical, you need to go out, hustle, meet your thought leaders in that particular vertical. Yeah. Meet everyone so they know who you are.
Competitors, vendors,
shake
marketers,
your
everybody.
Hands.
Get to know, map the whole ecosystem, kind of figure it out.
Okay. Well, I'm sure. Who wants to meet Paul Allen today? Well, I was just saying, maybe people are here to actually meet. I mean, well, no, there's a couple startups here I know that are right in that genealogy.
I'm having lunch with one tomorrow, so I guess.
Well, I introduced you to that guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm not going to name him. But okay, so let's get into this whole growth hacking topic, because this is why people paid a lot of money to watch you, $10, okay, to hear about this growth hacking technique, okay. So, myfamily.com website launched in 1998. Is that right? 1998.
Yep.
Okay. You have a record under your belt. Am I right? You have the fastest growing community website in history. One of the fastest.
At the time, it was the fastest.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. That's fair enough. So I went back and looked at the internet and tried to look at. I mean, this was this was a long time ago, right? 15 years ago. But I did some research and I said, okay, what are the startups now that got 1 million users in whatever? Like how long it took them to take 1 million years? I mean, 1 million users. So there was only a handful of startups in the short. It's a short list. So number one was Oink App, which got it 1 million in 3 weeks, which no longer exists, I guess. Instagram, 2.5 months. Spotify, 5 months, and Fab. You beat out Dropbox, Pinterest, Tumblr, Facebook, Twitter. Do you realize that?
No, I didn't know that until you shared that with me.
You should talk to Mark Zuckerberg.
I met Mark Zuckerberg.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay, not Paul Allen. Okay, but how did you crack the code for growth hacking?
So let me explain something. In 1997, as Ancestry.com was just taking off, we couldn't really raise venture capital for it. Nobody really knew what genealogy was. Investors tend to invest in things they know. Out of 7,000 venture capitalists, I've now met one who does genealogy. So, in 97, 98, the genealogy pitch didn't go very well. Now, as we grew our revenue, we got some angels interested, and that was going well. So that was our first round. But it turns out that we hired a consultant to kind of help us figure out the business model. And he said, look, genealogists keep track of everybody in the family. So they could build these dossiers on all of their relatives, and you could sell that data, and you guys could be the TRW of non-financial data. We fired him on the spot because we didn't want to exploit our customers. We never talked to that guy again. But then within a few weeks, it struck me that every genealogist is a member of a family, and all those family members actually care about each other. Turns out that only 7% of adult Americans do genealogy, but 95% consider it very important to stay in touch with their living relatives, cousins, brothers, sisters, moms, aunts, uncles. It's like a really important part of life. And so we actually came up with myfamily.com as a way to address the entire market of everyone that's ever been born. And it was a much bigger idea. It was a 10 times bigger idea than Ancestry.com. So we kind of cheated. When we launched MyFamily.com December 26, 1998, we had about 1 million monthly visitors to Ancestry.com. And we advertised to them for free that, hey, you can build a website and invite your family members to come, and you can share your genealogy discoveries with them. So that was a magic message, and that's where almost all of our initial growth came from. Now, the message was set up a free website and then invite all your relatives. So it was extremely viral. And the average...
Social networking before it came social.
It was private websites years before social networking was given the name. But it was a private social network. But it was extremely viral. We didn't like the word viral marketing back then, so we coined the term genetic marketing. Our investors liked that. We
It
got
didn't
some
really
good
catch
press.
on, though, right?
No, it didn't catch on. I'll tell you why
Genetic
later.
marketing.
But yeah, My Family was the fastest growing community site ever in 98, 99, 2000, and was the top photo sharing site in the world by 2000.
Okay, wow. That's crazy.
It's
So-
crazy that it
so-
doesn't exist now.
It doesn't exist, okay.
Well,
But
barely
I
exists.
just wanted to recant this idea where you got 1 million registered users in the first 140 days and sort of like did the cross marketing, and that's how you got it. But there's another startup that you had done, an app that you had created. We'll talk about. You want to talk about that now? Or you wanna talk about
Well,
that?
I met Zuckerberg in 2007.
Okay.
I had decided.
We're related. We're not related. I'm saying this is the app that's called We're Related.
Yeah. So when Mark Zuckerberg announced Facebook Platform in May of 2007, I was lucky enough to be there. I'd invested in a company that was partnering with Facebook. They thought they were one of 5 companies that were partnering with Facebook. It turns out Facebook was opening up the platform. 65 companies launched apps at that time. I met Mark Zuckerberg, and when he said, any third party can build an app and reach our user base. It could be a photo app to compete with Facebook's own photo tool. And I got on the phone that day with my main engineer and my product manager, and I'm like, we're changing our strategy. We're not going to build a destination site for families called Family Link. We're going to build an app on Facebook called We're Related. I think we came up with the name later. But when we launched that in October of 2007, it got 1 million users in 29 days.
Really?
And then a year later, it was adding 1 million users a week.
Wow.
We got 80 million users.
Okay. Wow. So is it still exist now?
No. You might have heard the phrase, live by the platform, die by the platform. So in 2009, 2010, as Facebook was kind of maturing as a company and as a business model, they realized that they had given away the whole store to third parties. They gave away unlimited viral growth, and there was no revenue sharing associated with it. So we got to keep 100% of the ad revenue we generated, and Facebook didn't get anything. So because they hadn't done like an Apple 70-30 rev share, I think Facebook started realizing they had envy of their app ecosystem.
Right.
And so they completely changed the platform over a 6-month period and basically kicked most of us off to one extent
This
or
is
another.
what a lot of VCs talk about is the whole platform risk. Like if you
Yeah.
build on your business on top of a platform, well, you're at the mercy of their, decisions. So that's exactly what
Yeah,
happened.
Twitter had the same issues. I think LinkedIn to some degree. But yeah, if you bet your company on the platform like we did,
Okay.
I mean, we didn't hedge our bet. If
Okay.
we had known, if we had even thought that Facebook could do an about face, we could have been collecting email addresses. We could have built our own viral engine on the side. I just naively thought, hey, this is going to last. It's going to help grow Facebook into the world's big.
Okay.
I predicted the day that Mark Zuckerberg announced. I wrote on my blog that Facebook will be the first social network to get to 1 billion users, and they only had 24 million at the time.
So who's the next one?
I don't know.
Oh, come on. No?
The next social network, Google
Well, no,
Plus.
Google Plus?
It'll hit 1 billion.
All right, I want to buy some Google stocks. So the thing is that, okay, let's talk about this. We're still on the growth hacking topic here. Growing this exponentially, you must have had some major scaling problems.
We did.
Right? So how do you, talk about this growing, scaling issue without, because a lot of companies, they'll grow really fast, and then what happens is they burn out. and
Well,
they fail.
Friendster collapsed because of its scale problems. I mean, it was years before Facebook, and it had tens of millions of users. It was growing like crazy, and then it didn't scale. It got so slow that it would take a minute or two for a page view. So they lost all their users. So we had the same problem. We built myfamily.com with 4 engineers on Microsoft ASP.NET, and it did not scale. So when you reached 1 million, 2 million users, we actually had to freeze the functionality, hire a crack engineering team. My brother actually hired all the guys that had done his search engine company at Folio, and we rewrote it over about a 12-month period with 6 absolutely genius engineers, and then it had unlimited scale from that point on.
So pause everything. No more features.
No more features.
Fix the problem.
Rewrite the
Rewrite
entire
everything.
back end, and then it was fast and scalable. But it cost us a year of
That's
of
actually
real
that's a
hypergrowth.
lot of time, though.
Yeah.
That's a lot of time
You
to
know,
pass by.
It's a lot of time to pass by, especially we didn't know the clock was ticking on the internet bubble bursting. So our valuation was growing into the hundreds of millions, and the bubble burst in April of 2000. And so it really crushed our possibilities with myfamily.com. The investors, in 2000 basically said, we got to get profitable, so let's shut down everything that's not generating revenue. So myfamily.com, that free model, that free viral model, which could have had hundreds of millions of users by now, was abandoned and turned into a paid subscription site, and the growth stopped. And so Ancestry.com became the company's focus for the next 13 years.
Okay, yeah, I'll definitely get to this topic here, but so all right, so let's on myfamily.com. Did you raise any seed funding for myfamily.com from myrealfamily.com? So did you raise?
None from
Andrew?
family, but my partner and I, we actually ended up selling our CD-ROM publishing company and just focusing on the internet, Ancestry.com. So we put $400,000 of our own capital
yours and your partners.
into Ancestry/myfamily.
Okay, but no relatives.
Nope.
Okay. Wow, that's a lot of money. Okay.
It was
well,
a
I
lot.
mean, that's a lot. So let's talk about like what sort of milestones do you need to hit, right, for your startups before you look for outside institutional funding. So a lot of startups here, they got seed. What sort of metrics should we hit before we start looking for We're gonna have Ty Savage next month, right? He has Revolution Ventures. So I'm sure there's people here that are like, I'm gonna talk to him next month. So what are some of the metrics that we need to have in place before we even talk to these guys?
So the metrics that you need in order to raise capital come and go. They ebb and flow. It's really different. I mean, we were 97, 98, kind of pre-internet, where anyone with a .com could go out and raise lots of money. So we're kind of in that awkward stage where, no one knew what the metrics were. Angel investors, had never invested in any internet startups before. VCs weren't interested in genealogy. So we actually got cash flow positive the month before we raised our first angel round, and that helped a lot. So we had user growth numbers, page view numbers. People didn't really know what that meant, but when you said we're cash flow positive, we raised 1.3 million, and we really had lots of angels coming in at the last minute saying, I want to participate in your round. It sounds really good.
So you waited till you get cash flow positive, and then you took a month to raise, and you got it, in a month.
Yeah, it was really fast. So
okay, so
that
can we still
400K
apply that today? I mean,
I don't know. I think
Okay.
I think each city's different. I think each industry, what you're building and who invests in that kind of thing, whether it's angels. I think crowdfunding, which the SEC finally got off their duff after the Jobs Act was passed a year and a half ago. They were supposed to pass rules for crowdfunding so the average Joe can invest in your startup. It's legal. It'll be legal to advertise your startup on YouTube or on the internet and have anybody put in $1,000, $2,000, $5,000. So I think that will change everything about angel investing and venture capital when you can sell equity directly online. And that's coming within 9 months. The platforms
okay,
will
so
be
we
there.
should definitely be looking for crowdfunding because actually Startup Grind New York, we're going to be getting some of the crowdfunding guys to talk,
Perfect.
including Perry Chen of Kickstarter and Slava, I think his name.
So I think Kickstarter's not going to do equity crowdfunding,
Okay.
but they continue to do crowdfunding of product. But then a lot of other platforms have said they're going to do equity crowdfunding as soon as the rules are finalized.
Okay. I'd love to talk about more about crowdfunding, but we'll still just talk about this whole process of, you got the seed, you got the Series A, then you had hired your brother.
Yep.
So this is your older brother
Oldest brother, yep.
that you brought in as a CEO,
Yep.
and then he went out and found institutional funding, and you guys raised close to $90 million in venture capital.
We raised $75 million in 3 rounds at increasingly large valuations. It was great times for all of us at the company. The first round we had Intel and CMGI. Then we had these just fantastic investors. Later, I think our C round we had AOL, Kodak investing in this photo sharing company, Compaq for one of the top computer manufacturers. We just had great investors, strategic investors, and everything was going well. And obviously the bubble burst kind of hit us smack in the face. But my brother was amazing at telling the visionary story and networking and raising the capital.
So I was going to ask about that because going into business with your family, this was your brother. How did that work out? I mean, did he act like an older brother to you? He's like, Paul, be quiet, let me talk. Where does he live?
How
did that work out?
It was kind of challenging because I went from founder and CEO to a VP. I got to pick whatever VP spot I wanted. So I went from VP of marketing to VP strategy, VP corp dev, where I bought RootsWeb, which was our top competitor in genealogy. So then VP of strategy. So whatever we were lacking in the company, I would jump in and kind of experiment, build a team. But I kind of lost my founder status. And
You took your co-founder status away?
well, no, I mean,
No? Okay.
I kind of lost the kind of reporting role. My co-founder and I had thought we'd bring in my brother to run Ancestry, and then maybe we wanted to be a Priceline the incubator behind Priceline, Walker Digital.
Oh, Walker, yeah.
We wanted to be that.
Okay, Jay
we
Walker.
thought Ancestry.com, MyFamily.com, niche content, search engine site. So we wanted to kind of raise capital, have each of these businesses. We thought we had the Midas touch, that anything we did would be amazing. And so we were kind of going to be the founders of the incubator that would launch all these properties. And then when the bubble burst, my brother was forced out. So even though he had done an amazing job raising all that capital, the VC said, we need a street savvy person to kind of get ready to take the company public. So it was disappointing, not because of our relationship, but because of how circumstances ended things.
But
for
he
us.
was the CEO, right?
Yeah.
So how come he didn't make you president?
I probably didn't
Is
like
this a sensitive
managing
issue here?
people. No,
No.
Later at Gallup, I took this assessment called StrengthsFinder, and there are 34 talent themes that a human being can possess, and they're in 4 different domains. Mine all happen to be in the strategic thinking domain, not in the relationship or influence or execution domains. And so when I realized that this talent assessment explained I didn't want to manage people. I wanted to invent things and create strategy and watch the numbers and do viral things and make things happen. So I really loved working with just a handful of people. I hated routine meetings. I hated direct reports that were taking me away from computer time. So I didn't really want the president role.
We'll talk about that StrengthsFinder because I'm sure that everybody is really antsy to hear about that. Moving on quickly because I'm trying to get some of these questions in here, but name branding. Okay, I know you're really big in that, name branding. How important is name branding to a company, to a startup? In 1999, you changed Ancestry.com to MyFamily.com.
Yep.
And then through this whole mergers and whatnot and company, it turned to Generation Network. And then Generation Network changed the company name back to Ancestry.com. So I guess the thing is that you're the one that came up with Ancestry.com, the name.
Yeah.
And then they actually changed it to that name. So does it make you kind of feel good, or is that the name that you think it should be named?
So for the genealogy business, Ancestry.com is by far the best name.
Okay.
There were 2 mistakes in that whole process. MyFamily.com, changing the name to MyFamily.com was not a mistake at the time because that was the fastest growing website ever. It's where we raised all $75 million. It was not around genealogy. All $75 million was because everyone realized every person on the planet wants to be connected to their family. This MyFamily.com idea is huge. So the $75 million came for that. Mm-hmm. The genealogy business was just nice icing on the cake. So it made perfect sense to change the name. When the bubble burst, the tragedy was that the MyFamily.com business unit was shut down and sidelined, and the code base hasn't been updated for 13 years. There's still 600,000 monthly visitors to MyFamily.com that running on 2000 code. So
Really?
I told you that those engineers were pretty amazing that wrote the code. It's still running on that same code base 13 years later. But it's not free, it's not viral. It's kind of like this old site that,
Old people go on?
Well, but the people that have 15 years worth of family chats and conversations and photos, they're going to stick with it forever. But I think that the Facebook scale idea was really lost as a casualty of the .com burst.
I got a good idea. You should get myfamily.com to merge with these photo sites like Instagram or, because they have the photos and then you can actually put a person's face to that, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that could be done.
Well, that's
with
just an idea.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, we got the whole branding thing right from the. So you got that branding thing from the beginning. So I'd like to talk about work-life balance, because if there's anybody in the startup world or in here in DC at least, right, it would be you, right? Because okay, so let's talk about your life. Well, let's just do this. The average age of entrepreneurs, according to entrepreneur.com and SBA, the average age, and this also includes high tech and Series A companies, but the average age is 40. So for that demographics means that you're either married with children and you have 10, 15 years of experience, which makes sense to me, right? I mean, if you're like Tig and you're investing in a company, you're like, yeah, I'd like to get somebody who knows what he's doing, right? Versus a lot of these seed funds. But what are some of the advice that you can give to entrepreneurs where they can have a balanced life outside of their startup? Can you have that? Can you have your cake and eat it too? Is it even possible?
Well, I hope so, because it's not worth it to sacrifice, your family life or your happiness, in kind of a more meaningful existence to just be successful in business. I don't envy the super rich and famous business people that, have kind of lost the meaningful relationships in their life. I think you really do want balance of some degree. But I think for me, it was giving up every other interest. I had plenty of bandwidth to do work. I'd come home. When we moved to Silicon Valley, my wife and I had 6 kids at the time, and she was expecting our 7th. Now, I did splurge. This was kind of a fun story. When we moved to Silicon Valley, we moved to Los Altos Hills, found a great rental there.
Very nice, yeah.
It was a very nice place to live. And but we actually, I did buy first-class tickets for all my family.
How big is your family? How big is your family?
Well, now we have 8 kids, but we had 6 at the time my wife was expecting. There were 9 first-class seats on the flight, and we filled up 8 of them. And, the poor woman who, you buy first class to get away from all the, crying kids or whatever. And we had 6 kids under 9 in first class. And I greatly regret that I didn't take a photo of that.
She must have requested to go over to Coach. Right? She's like, can I?
Thankfully, the kids did pretty well. But so yeah, I lived in Los Altos, 45-minute commute to San Francisco. And I'd get home at 6 or 7, have dinner, and really I would stay up. After the kids were all in bed, I'd stay up from like 10 to 1, doing market research, doing internet marketing. So I was able to squeeze in 3 or 4 hours of quality family time, and then get up early and start the next day. But I admire people like John Doerr, Sheryl Sandberg talks about her family balance, life balance. I think there's always a way to carve out, the few hours a day of quality time with your family, and then, get back to work. But for me, it was cutting out, a lot of hobbies, sports, all the other things I used to love to do. There was not time for that.
What was your average sleep? How many hours did you have a day?
Before I moved to Silicon Valley, I got a high-speed internet connection in '97. I got a huge satellite PC, so I had the first broadband in my neighborhood. And I never wanted to sleep. I wanted to know everything about every .com company that had ever been funded and every one of the tactics they used to get customers. And so I would stay up till 2 or 3 or 4 and get up at 7 or 8. So for a couple years, the passion and the energy was so amazing. That was my superpower for a little while.
So you had
know,
8 kids,
very
and then
little
you're doing like 3 hours, 4 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
That's
but
crazy.
I think I'm paying for it now.
Okay, very
I
good.
can sleep as long as I
I
want
see a little
now.
bit gray hair, so I
Yeah,
understand.
for sure.
Wow, this is why I thought this was going to be a very interesting story, because you have 8 children, 4 hours of sleep, but then you're such an amazing entrepreneur. It's just we look at you and we're like, wow, how do you do it? And probably most of us here that don't have kids. I mean, I have 2. I got nothing to complain about next year.
No,
Right? I mean, like,
That's great. But I mean, it is actually so much easier when you have no kids, you're starting a company. You really, I mean, think about all the 16-hour Silicon Valley, days. And so it's no surprise that many of the fastest growing companies are started by, younger, single people. I actually think you start getting great insights about human nature as you become a parent, as you have a relationship with a partner or a spouse. I think that as you get older, you start seeing more meaning in things. And I think it can expand your vision of what products you can do. I mean, in terms of business model, in terms of impact. So, I think it's great that older people want to be an entrepreneur. I just don't think you have the unlimited amounts of time and energy. But you also have wisdom and a lot of social network. It's amazing to me to be in my 40s now, my mid 40s, and to start seeing, people that I went to high school with in major leadership roles. And, it's like your generation starts to kind of run things. And, I think when you're in your 40s and 50s, the power of those relationships can be, I mean, a friend of mine, turns out, ran the international division of the Fed for 17 years, directly reported to Ben Bernanke, and I had lost touch with him since college.
you can ask for a loan from him if you want.
He provided, the Fed provided trillions of dollars to the ECB and stuff, but, I had lost touch with him, and then you find out, look what he's doing with his life. And so I think that the youth have the advantage of, unlimited energy and bandwidth, and then the seasoned people have the benefit of more wisdom and knowledge, and then better social networks.
Okay, so before I get into the Gallup Strength Finder, Ancestry.com, why did you leave Ancestry? You can finish that drink if you want.
I left so unhappy and disappointed that the MyFamily.com idea, which I really believed, and some of the Wall Street analysts had told us that, as eBay defined auctions and as Amazon defined e-commerce, MyFamily.com would define community on the internet. So when the company had lost its interest in building a web product that would reach hundreds of millions of people and was content to build a very successful e-commerce or subscription business around genealogy content, I was just crushed. So I left in 2002. The company was solidly profitable. We had several hundred employees. We'd moved the headquarters back to Utah to save on costs. I left on great terms with everybody. But for me, that chapter was over.
Okay, moving on.
Until Facebook launched, and then my next company was going to compete with Ancestry and disrupt Ancestry with those 80 million users I was telling you about.
Right, exactly.
We got
Let's
80
talk
million,
about that. Yeah,
we got 80 million
now.
users in 2.5 years, and we were going to make genealogy free on Facebook. So how do you beat a subscription business model with, billions of records and millions of subscribers?
For free.
For free.
Yeah. Free.
Advertising supported. So that was going really well until Facebook changed the game plan. Yeah.
Now we're back down to low.
And ironically enough, there are two Facebook connected people on the board of Ancestry.com now. Sheryl Sandberg's husband, Dave Goldberg, is on the board, and then the head of engineering at Facebook is on the board of Ancestry.com.
Wow. Survey monkey. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so switching gears because we're running out of time here because we want to open up to Q&A, but let's talk about Gallup Strength Finder. What is it? What made you move your whole entire family, like 8 of them, all the way out here to DC, which is great for DC, obviously, because now you're here. But what was so compelling about the Gallup Strength Finder and you becoming the evangelist?
So I really hadn't heard much about Gallup's Strength Finder. I had a friend. I had mentored him in the 2005, 2006 as an entrepreneur. I taught internet marketing and entrepreneurship for about 4 years. Mentored hundreds, really collectively taught and mentored dozens. Mentored dozens, taught hundreds. about internet startups. But anyway, he went to work for Gallup, and he called me and said, Gallup has this product, and it's got millions of users, but we want to take it to the whole world. We want everyone in the world to have a chance to take this assessment. So because I'd done the Facebook thing, Gallup hired me as a consultant. And within a few months, I thought, Gallup and this product are about the greatest mission-driven company I've ever met. They got interested in me to be more than just a consultant. And for whatever reason, my wife and I thought we were ready to kind of come to the East Coast and give that a try. We've only got 4 kids left at home. The others are gone. So, but it was really based on mission, and haven't regretted it at all. It's been an incredible year to transition from 23 years of being your own, startup to work for a company with 2,000 employees and a 75-year history. Mm-hmm. It's very different, and it's completely different, but it's been really amazing. And I have the opportunity to take this talent assessment and take it worldwide on mobile devices in every country and help hopefully hundreds of millions of people discover what they do best.
Okay, so there is about 100 people in this room, and how could they use your tool? They're running startups. So I'm going to go where? What.com, and then click on what, and then I'm going to have to do what? I have to, is it like eHarmony where I have to?
Many of you have bought the book, Now Discover Your Strengths. There's a code in the back. You go online, you take this test. It tells you what your top 5 innate talents are. But there's also StrengthsFinder 2.0, which is another popular book, sold 4 million copies. It's one of the top 5 best-selling books in business books every year. And you can buy that book, and there's a code in the back. Or you can go to GallupStrengthCenter.com and just pay $10 and take the assessment. What this does is, Sigmund Freud was the father of psychoanalysis, and he spent decades of his life trying to figure out what's wrong with each one of us. There's got to be disorders and problems, deep-seated. Where did they come from? Where did they start? So, psychoanalysis has an important role to play in kind of trying to figure out what's wrong with us. Don Clifton, who invented strength psychology, wanted to find out what's right with each person. He spent his entire life in interviewing and studying successful people, trying to figure out what are their naturally occurring patterns of thinking, feeling, and behaving that they use to become successful. And then he created a taxonomy of 34 of these natural patterns or talents, and then he built a test to help you figure out what your natural patterns and talents are. So for me, I gained unbelievable self-awareness in the last year and a half, after taking this assessment and giving it to all my family, friends, co-founder of Ancestry, all these. And what it does is it tells you how your brain is wired and what you can do naturally well. And it tells you the vast differences from person to person.
Can you have co-founders take this? So there's startups here that have co-founders hey, am I compatible or am I?
Hugely important to understand your strengths, your natural strengths, and your co-founder's natural strengths, and make sure that they're complementary. So we publish articles and content all the time that says, if you happen to be high ideation, I'm very high ideation. It's my number 3 talent. I have 10 new ideas every day, okay? I need to partner with someone who's got focus, okay, as a talent. Or someone who's got maximizer, which is a talent that, basically you want to take something good and turn it into something great. So certain people with certain talents would make great partners for me. But if I team up with someone else who has high ideation, and none of the execution talent, guess what? We'll come up with 20 new startups every day, and nothing will ever get built.
All right, so what was the site again?
GallupStrengthCenter.com.
GallupStrengthCenter.com. So write that down, see what your strengths are.
I think really not only entrepreneurial startups, but really any enterprise with 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 employees should invest in this assessment for their team and for their managers, so that everybody can know the psychological talents that each person brings to the party. And it's interesting, each talent that you have has a need that has to be met. If that need is not met, you can't exercise that talent. So there's a lot of human potential that's just sitting there waiting to be unleashed, but the manager doesn't give you permission to do that talent because they want you to do this instead. So Gallup is all about finding out what each person does best and make sure they have a role where they get to do what they do best every day. They bring more energy, more productivity. Teams that have these, that are able to use their strengths every day, higher productivity and profitability. There's so many outcomes. Less turnover. I mean, all the metrics you want in an enterprise, can be the result of a great strengths-based culture.
Okay, so we're running out of time. I got to open up to Q&A, but before we go to Q&A, I forgot one very, very important question, which was, so it's actually going back to marketing, because I actually had put this on the description for this thing.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
tell us your 5 top distilled marketing techniques back to the growth hacking. If you had sold this company called 10X Marketing, which got sold to Vista. There was 200 marketing techniques that they had. So
Yeah.
if you can get the top 5 marketing techniques that you can give bestowed to this crowd, what would they be?
So I'll try to
Take
race
out
through
your
them.
papers out,
So
guys.
of the 200 tactics that I cataloged that we had successfully implemented at Ancestry.com or MyFamily.com, there was actually 197 that we had tried and they worked. We probably tried 300 or 400, but 197 tactics that worked, brought us customers, brought us revenue. And they probably fit in 10 categories. I'm going to give you the 5 biggest categories, and then under each category, there's probably 10, 20, or 30 tactics. So the number one strategy for me is viral marketing. You engineer your product so that each person that uses the product happens to invite or share their experience with others. Now, you can do that in kind of a spammy way, or you can do it in a really cool value add way. So MyFamily.com was extremely viral because the more people in your family that joined the site and shared photos, the greater your experience was and the greater their experience was. We didn't do a feed that would expire after time. It was more like a repository of all your family's content. So if you were the 15th person that joined your family website, you had access to all of the archives of all the photos and everything else. We actually had voice chat. Sorry, this is an aside. Voice chat in '99 where you could talk for free to any relative on myfamily.com 5 years before Skype was invented. So that's how we were actually pretty cool at the time. So, okay, you can tell I've got a chip on my shoulder about this whole my family shutdown thing. Okay, so viral marketing, another way to do that is Facebook apps or mobile apps where new users, kind of Instagram was an amazing viral app because you signed up for it using your Facebook account, and then it tells you, here's all your other friends that are already on it. Do you want to connect to them? And then all of a sudden, you've got this great photo stream. Instagram was one of the best out-of-the-box experiences ever. So engineer, if you listen to Seth Godin, it's not about advertising what you built. It's about getting engineers to help you engineer something that is viral and worth sharing by its very nature. So that's number one. Number two is affiliate marketing. Now, back in the 90s, affiliate marketing was the biggest thing ever. So when Ancestry.com had 400 employees and tens of millions of dollars in revenue, one employee accounted for 1/3 of all of our new customers. That was our affiliate manager. We had recruited 30,000 partner websites all over the world to promote Ancestry.com. We created new banners, new links, all kinds of search boxes. People could put all these genealogy widgets all over their website, and then we paid a commission for every customer that came through any particular referrer. And Amazon calls this their associate program, and they pay like a 5% commission. We were paying 40% commission with contests to help incentivize people. We'd pay up to 50% commissions. The big web hosting companies in like 2002 to 2008 were paying 150% commission on the first year of hosting. So you pay $100 to host your website, the affiliate would get $150. Okay, so there are some really aggressive affiliate marketers, but for us, 1/3 of your customer base coming from one of your 400 employees, that was pretty material. And if you join CommissionJunction.com, you can basically see all the best run affiliate programs in the US. You can see every banner they're using, every landing page. It's the biggest competitive intelligence gold mine for any startup that's doing anything. I just think everyone needs to be a part of that Commission Junction world. So viral, affiliate, pay-per-click. Every entrepreneur, you got to figure out, can you use pay-per-click to drive consumers to your site? Or if you're doing B2B, if you're a B2B launch business model, do landing pages and generate leads from keyword advertising on Google.
So this is like AdWords.
AdWords, yeah. So back in '99, it was GoTo.com, Bill Gross's Idealab startup that invented pay-per-click, keyword auctions. And then Yahoo bought them, and Google kind of infringed on that patent and had to pay a big settlement. But Google's worth hundreds of billions now. But the idea for keyword selling came from GoTo.com, and at Ancestry, we bid on. It used to be a penny per click was the minimum bid. We bid on every surname in the U.S. Census, 150,000 surnames, and they wouldn't let us buy all those keywords. So we had to have a phone call with them, and it turns out there was a genealogist at GoTo.com that was the quality assurance manager, and we convinced her to let us buy 35,000 most common surnames for 2 cents a click. And it generated hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue for us.
Well, obviously that's different nowadays, right? Because it's now a couple of dollars a click.
It is. It can be $15, $20 a click. It's crazy. But you can use 2, 3, 4, 5-word phrases, and you can still get them for like a fraction of the cost of like a 1 or 2-word phrase. So go after long tail niches.
Long tail, that's what I was
yeah.
gonna say.
So pay-per-click and lead capture is extremely important. Now the fourth one is better than the third one, but it takes a lot longer for it to play out, and that is search engine marketing, search engine optimization. Now my approach to search engine optimization, and it worked well with Ancestry.com, was what I call a mass publishing approach to search engine optimization. Find a way to build a website with literally hundreds of thousands of pages of content. Now, that could be public domain content, that could be directories, that could be, go to the Library of Congress, look at, directories in print, and find useful reference material that you can license or get for free, public domain, and publish these websites with just hundreds of thousands of pages, and then get partners to link to it. Now, there's all kinds of poor quality things out there, but if you actually have really valuable content, and you have that large of a set of pages, and you've got to get good internal linking strategy, and then you've got an external machine that continually adds new links. Now, the reason you can get away with this is if you harness user-generated content to add value to the pages that you start publishing. So you publish a directory of private schools in the United States. There might be 20,000 of them. But then you get people who go to those schools to add value by submitting content. So you start with a raw kind of skeleton of tons of pages, and then you invite people to come and add value. And pretty soon you've got this unique content. It's quite interesting, and it can get some decent search engine traffic for you. Now, the fifth one I would say is your house email list is absolutely critical. There are so many companies that could do a great job of marketing to their house list, but they neglect it or they overuse it. They don't personalize the email messages. You've got to have really high value add email messages. I remember at Ancestry when we had millions of people wanting to find out what new genealogy databases did you post this week. So we would send out an email. When we started personalizing that to the user, it generated an increase of 400% more revenue than when it was generic to all users. So when you start learning about your customers and personalize the email marketing message or the content marketing message to that user, then it actually meets their needs. They click through a lot more often. And the other thing we did at Ancestry was we chunked our email list from one big monthly mailing to 4 small weekly mailings, 1/4 of our list each week. But we would do a small test mailing on Monday with 4 subject lines or 4 different calls to action. And then we would do the winner on Wednesday. And then the next week, we would start with the winner and 3 other tests. So we had this testing machine, A/B test, ABCD testing every week. And again, 400% increase in revenue when we started chunking our list and optimizing it. Instead of like one blast every month that was generic, now it was like incredibly effective because it was personalized, it was tested, and we went with the winner each week.
So I'd say MailChimp. People start using MailChimp for that, right?
Yeah.
MailChimp, okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, we only have actually time for 1 or 2 questions. So yes, VIP member. There we go. All right. So we're going to open this to Q&A, and here you go.
Hey, Paul. Rich Estes. I'm the founder of Home Tracker. The question's a Ancestry.com question, and it's how do you take people using your platform and just signing up into user-generated, actually inputting things into it? What, if there is one thing, or how did you make that transition?
That's a great question. You know, there's a company that started years ago called Payscale. And Payscale.com was a brilliant user-generated content where you would basically fill out this big form about your job, your title, your years of experience, your education background, and your salary. And you would submit all this data, and then they would compare you to everyone else in their database, and then they'd give you a report telling you, are you underpaid or overpaid based on your job title and how long you've worked there and where you live. So within a year or two, Payscale was the top salary database in the world. So Ancestry was a natural for this because it turns out that the most popular database ever built on Ancestry.com was when we invited all the genealogists to submit their family tree with all the records, all the ancestors in that tree, and then we indexed that entire thing. It was called the Ancestry World Tree. And then our engineers over several years started automatically matching. So if you upload your tree to us, then we'll start matching each person, your great-great-great-grandfather, and if we have any records on that person, they'll automatically show up in your tree. So we stitched or linked all of the billions of records we already had digitized, and we started algorithmically matching them to your tree. So there was a huge value back to you for submitting your family tree. So I think if you can find value, get users to upload content or to share content by providing some really amazing instant value back to them.
Okay, we only have time for one last question, so raise your hand who wants to laugh. Okay, for those who raised their hands, who collected the most business card? You got one? Oh, that's you. How about you? No, you didn't catch any? No? Okay. How many numbers? All right, how many fingers I have behind my back? 3? What? 2? 5? All right, it was 5. So there you go.
Hi, Andrew Braychek. I was very fascinated to listen to your story about how you started Ancestry with your co-founders so many years ago, and I was thinking a lot about you were kind of bound, good or bad or otherwise, by the technology choices you had at the time as far as distribution and coming up with how are we going to do this. I'm just thinking now that we're in the 21st century and we have all of this is kind of in the past and all of this content has been mostly been indexed. If you were to create a new Ancestry or equivalent now, something that was more prospective, based perhaps on new content, what would you do?
So, I mean, I tried with the Facebook approach where we could have an advertising-supported company. In our peak, we hit 6.5 million in revenue. It was extremely, we were very profitable. And then we were going to digitize and index data and license data and offer it for free. So to try to compete with Ancestry, I mean, I probably will never do that again. But if you could change the business model from a subscription model of $150 to $300 a year per user to a free advertising-based model, that was kind of the best shot at it. But yeah, I think it's almost game over because with the hundreds of millions of dollars that have been spent on digitizing and indexing records, and then the millions of family trees, tens of millions of family trees that have been submitted, it's kind of like eBay, where when's there going to be another auction site, that has that many buyers and that many sellers? So the network effect is so fully in place that it's really hard to imagine. There are some interesting international competitors that have done very well to be the top genealogy site in Poland or in Germany, and in Sweden there was a pretty interesting one. Ancestry tends to acquire these companies, and so there's one in France that's the leading genealogy company in France. It's still independent, but I wouldn't choose to take that Goliath on right now.
Okay, so I got 2 last closing questions. And I always ask these 2 questions. So if you were 15 years ago, sitting in this audience, sitting in front of a badass founder, what kind of advice would you have given yourself then?
So, because I had no business experience and no technology experience in school, I really should have sought more mentors early on, more mentors, more advisors. But I think even more than that, I neglected, when we had hundreds of employees, I loved hiring people that were smart, that were skilled, but I really neglected investing in them personally and understanding what drove them. I assumed everyone was driven by the same mission, by the same vision, by the same, being self-starter, being self-motivated. The psychology of people is so fascinating to me right now. And if I could do it over again, 15 years ago, if I could have had technology and tools to help me understand the dozens and then hundreds of people that worked for our organization and really use, look at Google's head of people and how much money they invest in, understanding their people and building systems. So I wish that I hadn't neglected my people. I really was a terrible manager. I didn't like to do one-on-ones. I didn't like to do recurring meetings. I did have some people that loved working for me because they were self-starters and I would just throw money at them. The more successful they were, the more money I would give them. And they would say, Paul, you're the most empowering manager I've ever had. Well, I was an ignoring manager. And so that's really my biggest regret. And now that my eyes have been opened to the behavioral economics, the people side of business, which Gallup is kind of world-renowned for, I really wish I could go back and provide each one of them assessments and human development paths so that each one could accomplish, both for the company and then for their own life and career, be better at what they did. And so, yeah, I'd love to take that one back.
Okay, we have one final question, and this is probably the most important question of all.
Yeah, right.
It is. So, who's your favorite superhero or historic figure, and why?
So I knew this was coming, and my favorite superheroes of all time are Bill S. Preston and Theodore Logan, Bill and Ted, from Bill and Ted's Most Excellent Adventure, and I'll explain why.
That's what I did. I was laughing.
I will explain why. Sure. We were launching Infobases when their movie came out, and it turns out that by going back in time on a time travel machine and gathering up historical figures with great insights and wisdom and bringing them to the present, they were able to save the future. What other superheroes created music that aligned the planets and brought universal harmony and enabled communication with all forms of life, including extraterrestrial beings and household pets, and eliminated war and poverty? And it was great dancing music at the same time. So Bill and Ted actually outperformed any superhero that I can think of who just kind of took care of one villain and then had another one to deal with. Bill and Ted brought universal peace to all forms of life.
Okay, so actually that was a good answer because I was waiting for this. Wait, hold on. So you, obviously, you already told me the answer. And what I usually do is I go on eBay to look for like an action figure or something, right? This one, I got a vintage Bill and Ted adventure movie poster, but I put Startup Grind on there, right up there. So
that is awesome.
Ladies and gentlemen, Paul Allen, thank you.
That is fantastic. Thanks, Brian.
Okay.
If we had been ultra rich and famous, my business partner and I were going to put billboards on the freeways coming into Utah with him and me welcoming
That's good.
everyone to the state of Utah.
Awesome.
So it didn't happen. We didn't stick through the IPO, so we didn't have unlimited amounts of money to throw at billboards.
Okay.
But